Welcome to DevelopLex, a Middle Tech production hosted by me, Weston Lockhart, Ross Bogus, and Evan Knowles. This series will focus on the ins and outs of real estate development and investing, where we'll have the opportunity to sit down with developers of our cities, veterans of the industry, and key people that have over time made a massive impact on communities and neighborhoods. The purpose of this series is to be able to bring a knowledge base to our audience beyond that of what reading a book or watching a how-to video ever could, and educate from those who have done it by hearing their stories, both good and bad, along the way. We feel that historically the learnings of real estate have been inaccessible without being connected, and we would love to open the doors to the next generation of doers, as well as shine a light on how visions of community have been brought to life. We hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Bank of the Bluegrass. It's easy to preach about being a community bank without actually operating that way, but I can attest as a real customer of Bank of the Bluegrass that they are truly in the community and for the community. Whether it's closing a real estate transaction that needs some creativity, troubleshooting an issue where you need a real person on the other end of the phone, or just the simple fact that when you walk in the door, your banker knows your name, Bank of the Bluegrass has you covered. Plain and simple, the best bank in town. Bank of the Bluegrass, member FDIC. NMLS 421548, Equal Housing Lender. DevelopLex is sponsored by SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate, a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky, affiliated with the SVN International Network, which is comprised of over 1,600 advisors and staff and 200-plus offices across the globe. The SVN Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN provides commercial real estate services to large corporations, middle market businesses, and individual entrepreneurial investors. Serving the greater Lexington area, SVN offers advisory services for sales, leasing, management, and development of commercial properties locally, regionally, and nationally. With transaction volume of over $400 million, the advisors at SVN Stone Commercial Real Estate have vast experience and deep understanding of all aspects of commercial real estate.
Craftsman Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. CraftsmanContractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so that their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity.
Welcome back to DevelopLex. Today you have Weston Ross in the studio, and we are pleased to welcome CJ May. CJ is somebody that we are very excited to have on, that we have been excited to have on for a while. And CJ is the president of the May Group, which is a large developer based right here in Central Kentucky. They've done extensive development work all over the country, some around Central Kentucky, but we will let CJ talk more about that. So CJ, welcome on.
Thank you, Weston and Ross. I guess talk a little bit about where I came from and where I've been.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Pikeville, Kentucky. I graduated Pikeville High School in 1969. I graduated Pikeville College in 1973 with a degree in business administration and a minor in psychology. None of my family ever attended college, but my wife, who I was dating in high school, convinced me that education was a valuable tool, and she encouraged me to try college. So I tried it for a year, and she encouraged me to do it for another year. So once I got through the second year, I thought, well, heck, I'm halfway there. Why not just go ahead? So I managed to graduate Pikeville College. I played baseball at Pikeville College, but we didn't have scholarships back in those days. So I worked at Kroger's, worked 37 and a half hours a week, paid my tuition, and proudly graduated owing nothing. So 100% of my tuition I earned. With the encouragement of my wife, Billy, and she and I have been married for 49 years. You'll probably hear her name a few times during this interview. So we left Pikeville Well, when I first graduated, I went to work in the insurance world as an adjuster. And I did that for 5 years, and I really didn't like the business. So I accepted a job in Bowling Green as a land agent for a coal company. We went down and rented or leased property for mineral rights, coal, oil, gas, and so forth. And I did that for 2 to 3 years, and suddenly the coal company sold out. And I'm in Bowling Green, Kentucky with new twin daughters and in a strange town. And I said, now what am I going to do? So one of my friends talked me into getting a real estate license. So I went and got a real estate license in somewhere around 1981. A year later, I went back and got my broker's license. And, you know, you're in a strange town. You don't know people. You can't really expect to be able to sell houses. So I thought, well, I'm going to broker motels. So we started brokering hotels, did some pretty big jobs. I mean, we sold a hotel at the Boston airport and several large properties.
I'm curious what got you into hotels? Was that something that you grew up
Well,
around?
I knew
or?
I couldn't do houses.
Got it.
I just wasn't cut out for that. And so I was looking, you know, for some commercial line, and so, you know, we just settled in on hotels. So I did that for a while, and then it occurred to me that I'm brokering hotels, I'm brokering properties, and I don't even know how they came about. How were they even built? And so I decided, you know, I need to know more about this business. So I went to work. I applied for a job and went to work for a shopping center developer. And this was probably in the probably mid 80s. And these folks did Walmart centers when they first came through this part of the country. Walmart was so young, it's my recollection that we did a lot of Walmart Winn-Dixie projects combination. Walmart's credit wasn't even established at that time. And we sort of had to rely on the Winn-Dixie credit to get the shopping centers financed. We had big New York money behind us, but still, you know, they looked for credit. So anyway, I did that for a few years, and I thought, well, I need to move on because, you know, I just thought things needed to be done differently in the development company. So I moved on and I went with web companies for a short period of time. And it was a good experience with web. It was back during, you know, the heydays of the mid to upper 90s. We then I got a call from a developer in Nashville, and he said, hey, I want you to come work for me. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I said, I'm living on Shinaway Road. My wife's working at St. Joe Hospital. I'm with the web companies on the 16th floor of the Vine Center. I mean, I'm large and in charge.
Yeah,
over
life
here,
is good.
So life was good. Why would I want to move to Nashville? So I go back and I talk to my wife, and she says, well, you know what? I never thought she would even consider it, but she said, you know, there's a program at Vanderbilt where I can get my master's in nursing, and I'd be willing to move to Nashville. I said, oh, my God. So I called the developer back, and I said, look, if you can pay me as much as my wife and I both make to allow her to go back to school, pay me a little signing bonus, then I'll come to work for you. So I thought, I'll never hear from him again. So he calls back the next day, and he said, when can you start? So I'd committed. So we moved to Nashville for a total of about 5 years. And Nashville's changed a good bit since then. But anyway, we lived down there. My wife graduated, got her master's in nursing, and we decided to move back to Lexington. But back during the days when I was at Bowling Green, I ran into one guy from Lowe's who bought probably a 2.5 acre piece of property from me. Back in those days, I was broker. Back in those days, Lowe's stores were more like an 84 lumber, outside storage of lumber and more contractor sales. So time went on, and I guess a few years later, after I moved back to Lexington, we brokered a deal for Lowe's on New Circle Road, where the old Hex store used to be. It's across from the Lex dealer. So brokered a deal there. So those were two Lowe's deals that I did during the 80s. And then right after I moved back to Lexington, I get a call from my friends at Lowe's. They said, "Hey, we've been looking at this operation in Atlanta, and they're known as Home Depot, and they heat and cool their lumber. You know, it's like they had these big boxes, and they actually got their lumber stored inside. And we think if we don't do that, that we're going to be out of business someday." And I said, "Well, that makes sense." And they said, "Would you be interested in helping us?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess so." So I really didn't know what I was getting into. So we started working with Lowe's with their new development program. And one of the first ones we did was Pikeville, back in my old stomping grounds.
I bet that was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool, but the project lasted 7 to 8 years. And the reason was, right as we were getting started, we were going to build an enclosed mall and then a strip center also with Lowe's and a Winn-Dixie. And the first Gulf War broke out, and financing froze nationwide. Well, during the meantime, we had to build a 5-lane bridge to access this property because flat land is so hard to come by. So we had to put the money up for the bridge. There was matching funds, some federal bridge replacement program funds, some city funds, and some private development funds. So we put up $1 million, or my partners put up $1 million, and the bridge had to be built before the project. From a timeline standpoint, if you didn't do it first, then you would have a building and no bridge to it. So we had to start the bridge earlier. So shortly after the $1 million was put up and the bridge contract was let, the war broke out. And the lender said, "We're not going to fund." We said, "What do you mean you're not going to fund? You've given us a commitment." "Well, you're just going to have to sue us." So the project got stalled. The bridge got built. The project was stalled. And over time, our friends, Dr. Ballard Cassidy was one of the owners. There were several property owners, and his son, Ballard Cassidy Jr., and I graduated high school together. So I knew the owners, and they were willing to be patient with me. And so over time, things got better, and we wound up doing a Lowe's and a Walmart anchored shopping center.
Yeah, I know exactly where that is. That's funny.
Yeah, it's not what we wanted, but in retrospect, it's probably, in today's world, kind of the highest and best use of that property. But because we had so many challenges for that property, and we overcame those. We had to extend sewer. We were into floodway, so we had to get hydraulic studies, all the stuff done to get them out of the floodway. Lowe's, I guess we proved that we could perform. So here comes a steady flow of business. So we wound up doing most of the stores in Kentucky. We've got our fingerprints on. When I say we do them, we've somehow got our fingerprints on them. In the early days, Pikeville, Elizabethtown, Corbin, some of those, we're able to build and own. And the group that I was associated with, we sold 3 to the Kentucky Teachers Pension Fund. Then there came a point where Lowe's got big enough, strong enough financially, and they said, "Hey, you know what? We love you, but you can't own our buildings. How about you just be a third-party resource for us?" So my job was to help Lowe's with their expansion program. In any capacity they wanted me to serve, then I was willing to do that because I felt fortunate to even have that opportunity. So we then got assigned. We did, like I said, most of the Kentucky stores. We did projects, like Danville, Georgetown, Somerset, where we could purchase 50 acres. We could sell them off their piece, and we could develop the balance of it. That was a pretty good gig as well. So, but many of them, especially in faraway locations, were just a consultant. We were consultants on. Our staff was set up to travel and handle that kind of volume. So we first were assigned, from that point forward, we were assigned upstate New York. So we did a lot of stores, and particularly the western half of the state, let's say from Utica west, over into Syracuse and to in Buffalo and those areas. And I guess we reached over into Queensbury near Saratoga Springs and did one over there too. And then Lowe's called us and said, hey, we need you to run out to Washington State, and we're looking at an acquisition of this group called Eagle Hardware. Eagle Hardware had 33 stores. They were along the West Coast. They were in Colorado, Utah, and several states out on the West Coast. So we said, well, how are we going to get paid? Because there was no real estate deals to do. We were asked to analyze these properties and determine whether Lowe's could duplicate those locations or whether they need to acquire these people. So we went and we drove and we drove and we drove, and we came back and we went over and did a big presentation to their group over there. Bob Tillman was the president, chairman, and CEO at that time.
Of Lowe's, correct? Of
Lowe's, yes. So I tell everyone I had to rent a suit and we go over and do a presentation. And we said, look, you asked us to check the real estate, which we did. It's going to be hard to duplicate, but we don't think you should purchase these people. We're not operations people. We don't think you can operate your stores in here. So they said, I remember him throwing this book across the table. He tells the CFO, tell Merrill Lynch we're not interested. So I said, well, I just got ourselves fired. So we
and not to interrupt you, but what kind of qualities are you like? What kind of qualities are you looking for when you're going to Washington to look at these stores and to make this presentation?
Well, there's a lot of qualities, a lot of factors to go into a successful site. Certainly, location, as always, access, visibility, and are there other properties where, if you want to penetrate that market, are there other properties where you can put stores? Gotcha. And it can take a while. If you're doing a surgical type operation in those larger cities, you sometimes have to do assemblages, and zoning's tough, and you got neighborhood issues. You got to deal with neighbors, and which is okay. I mean, they got their rights too, but it's just sometimes difficult to duplicate.
Gotcha. So there's an overall market study of in Washington.
Yeah, pretty much.
Got
it. And so anyway, we go back, and then a couple of weeks later we get a call, and they say, can you come back and do that presentation again? I said, really? Said, yeah, we got a different group. So I had to go rent that suit again, and we go back. We go back and they decided to buy them. So it was a 33-store, $1 billion acquisition, and against our recommendation. But I think it's turned out okay. But at that point, they had a presence on the West Coast, and that's when we were then assigned Colorado, Utah, the entire state, of both states. So we left upstate New York, and we went west. So it was a tremendous experience. I couldn't imagine. And we got to fly, in the Falcon jets and at times. And I'm going, man, I just came from Pikeville, Kentucky. I squeaked through Pikeville College. And so now I'm in Lowe's University.
Yeah.
Lowe's University, I got to travel with the market research people, the site acquisitions, the engineering, design, construction people. So I got exposed to a lot of things. And what we did in California, we did a little work in California, but particularly Colorado and Utah, was that we were asked to drive the markets and take our old-fashioned maps. This was before Google Earth, and we would stop at convenience stores. Convenience stores had the most current maps because they sold pretty often, as opposed to a bookstore. So we get the old-fashioned maps. I would ride shotgun or passenger seat, have someone else drive, and I would take a highlighter and I would highlight our trip, and we would circle locations where we thought would be a good location for the stores. Now, these were based upon where their competitors were located. Like Home Depot was the main competitor. And Lowe's always said, that's our only long-term threat is Home Depot. So there were others out there, Builder Square. We would see other home improvement people, but Home Depot was the real long-term threat. They knew that. And so we would try to base our storing strategy in those markets around where the Home Depot stores were. But having bought the Eagle Hardware Group kind of messed up our strategy some because there was already stores there in that market, so it made it a little tougher. We would not have access to their market research group until such time that we had completed our study, which was more feet on the ground type studies. Yeah. And then we would get with their market research people that had all the data, the demographics, the trade areas, the sales estimates and stuff, and we would compare notes. And it was pretty interesting how close we were. And usually when we were different, it was because they had not taken into consideration maybe the terrain or the access or some physical reasons why they could not be where their mapping told them they could be. So, but a tremendous experience. So we learned a lot from that. What we learned was, and if I started all over in this business, I'd probably start in market research. Because what you're going to do is, if you have a certain business model, you're going to go in and identify your primary, secondary trade areas, your sales estimates, your market share, and that's the beginning of your analysis for your return on investment. And we usually would, Lowe's would say, if I can't get at least 11% ROI, then this deal is a no-go. So usually cutting costs didn't move the needle much. It was increasing sales that really moved the needle. So we got exposed to that kind of thing. And I guess that I would say today, from what little success we've had, that picking a site is probably our strength. And if you have a good site over time, you're going to be okay. Yeah. And, the business was a lot easier and more fun back in the day. Now the tenants know our business and they know how we make money and they want to make that money now. So we've learned that sometimes you just have to purchase the property. We typically would like to operate under options and then package our deal, get our leases signed, get all of our contracts together, the construction, the engineering, and so forth before we close on it. We wrap it up, we package it, put a bow around it, close, and we start construction the next day. It sometimes is difficult to do that, and I mentioned earlier about the war breaking out, and we've been through the 2008 recession that we lost money on, but it wasn't on land that we owned. We were looking at a 200-acre project in Georgetown where the new interchange is located. We actually got the permit from the federal government, the interchange justification study is what it's called, to put that interchange in. We did the preliminary design on it with the input from Toyota, and we had a bunch of tenants that had signed letters of intent, and we were moving forward. But when the recession hit in 2008, all those tenants went in their foxholes, and then our option ran out. So we dropped $1 million in pre-development money. So I guess I'll pause here and let you guys fire some questions or whatever. But the one thing I would say before I do that is that, in my view, the risk in this business is in the pre-development. Once I get through my pre-development and I know what my project looks like, I've modeled it in a way that I know what it's, the income and cost and so forth look like, I've taken a lot of that risk out. But during pre-development, there's a lot of things that can prevent you from moving forward. And those things are wars, recessions, COVID, things that we refer to as third party, or I'm sorry, as external forces that we can't control. And those are, I guess, a big lesson we've learned over the years.
Are you looking to start or scale your real estate portfolio in Central Kentucky? Check out Rapid Fire Investments. They find off-market, discounted real estate deals just for you, so you can save time and maximize profits. From single-family homes to multifamily apartments, no matter what your investment goals are, Rapid Fire can help you reach them. Sign up for their email list today and get notified when new properties become available. Just go to rapidfireinvestments.com. That's rapidfireinvestments.com.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, we appreciate you sharing that. I have many questions, but I will just hit on a few. The first one would be, you had this incredible relationship with Lowe's that was just built over the years, seemingly. What are the important qualities that Lowe's was looking for from you as someone that was doing site selection, consulting, all of that kind of work? What are qualities that they were looking for in you? Because obviously you went from one store to they're flying you. You're in the Lowe's school. You're in Lowe's University. Was that just relationship trust over time, or was that, they felt like you were really, really good at one certain thing, or what were qualities that they looked?
I guess they thought I was just handsome. That's no, you hit on it, Weston. It's trust. That's it. I mean, that's the buzzword. I even told them, I said, guys, there's a lot of good people in Colorado and Utah that know the lay of the land out there, and they can do this as good or better than me. And what I heard was, but we can't trust them. And it finally had occurred to me, wait a minute, this is kind of what this is all about. So, and I was proud to say that we were trustworthy. I think we had earned that trust. And it's hard to earn that. You can't buy it. You gotta earn it. So
you gotta show them what you're.
That's it. And I had one of my friends. I just came back from North Carolina to a funeral this past weekend. And he was one of my old Lowe's buddies. His wife passed away. I hadn't seen him in 15 years. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to North Carolina. If you want to go, hop in. So we went, and he really appreciated that. So we became friends and trusted, business partners in a way. So we became somewhat of a meaningful part of that. At their peak, though, Lowe's was doing 120 stores a year at one point. And in 2008, they hit the brakes with both feet. So, at that point in time, we had to somewhat reinvent ourselves, and that's when we started doing some different things. And I guess this takes us to Georgetown, and some of the things we're doing up there now. We've bought a shopping center, and we fixed it up. It was an old center, and we recently sold it. We're going to roll that over into a 1031 exchange. In the meantime, we bought other property. We're building a medical project, medical-based project. It's a 10-acre site across from the Georgetown Hospital. That's anchored. It's going to be anchored, and it's under construction. It's going to be anchored by the Georgetown Community Hospital. They will occupy 30,000 feet. We have 15,000 square feet that's still unleased, but we'll lease it. We'll have Aldi's food store, and we'll have 5 out parcels, small out parcels at the end of the day. But it's a great location. To my point earlier about location, we've owned that property for, we assembled 2 pieces, and we've owned it for one for 6 years and one for 8 years.
Yeah.
Waited for the game to come to us.
What's so interesting now, and you kind of touched on this earlier, is that, I'm happy that I've been able to be in this capacity, much less than you, but to do some site selection. I do feel like, to your point, it's changed so much. There's so much accessible data to the real estate managers and to the retailers themselves, that our job is so detail oriented, and sometimes it really comes down to actually going and seeing the dirt that the person will actually occupy. What are some qualities that when you were looking for a Lowe's location, what are some qualities that you looked for when you were actually visiting a site you had never seen? And maybe middle of nowhere is probably not a good way to say it, but
I'm
Washington.
also very curious. There's a strong co-tenancy correlation with Walmart. Was it Walmart first, or was it Lowe's first, or did they come in tandem?
Well, if you go to markets like Frankfurt, is a good example. You got to drive by Lowe's to get to Walmart, right? So Lowe's was there first. You go to Elizabethtown, same thing. Lowe's was there first. Now, if you go and you got to drive by Walmart to get to Lowe's, then Walmart was there first. But I think that they made good co-tenants because they didn't overlap that much in their inventories and their merchandise. The garden centers did some. They overlapped some. But that's sort of incidental to Walmart. That's Lowe's bread and butter, And I think they had maybe a Walmart person on their board at Lowe's when they were first starting, and to get some good advice from them, because they had similar startup plans and strategies, and that was to do the small markets and circle the cities and then work their way in. That's what Walmart did. That's what Lowe's did. Kmart, Home Depot did the big cities, and then they tried to operate in the small cities. I know Home Depot's really struggled with that. They opened Frankfurt, they closed it. They bought land in Richmond, they didn't develop it. So I think they're really strong with contractor sales in big markets. But as far as any deeper relationship with Walmart and Lowe's, I don't know of it. But they do make good co-tenants.
And then as far as like when you were looking for a site for Lowe's, what were the big qualities that they had you looking for? What were strong indicators of a good site for them, or for you, I guess?
Yeah. Well, if there was already a Walmart there, they'd say, take the guesswork out of it and put us next to it.
That's an easy one.
Now, if we're going into a market where there maybe isn't a Walmart, we'd look for the obvious things: the access, the visibility, the utilities, the traffic. You look at the topography. What about your utilities? Is there rock there that's going to drive your cost up? There's just all kinds. But we had a technical or a site acquisition checklist, a technical checklist that we would work on with the help of one of my technicians, and it would be more preliminary in nature, and then we would determine whether we wanted to start down that path, and we would try to develop a roadmap. This is where we want to go with this, and we would base that on our preliminary studies, and then you have to go back in and, of course, do all your detailed studies and permitting and so forth. But if we saw anything that appeared to be a roadblock rather than a speed bump, then we would make a decision to maybe pull out and go to a different site.
And with a large retailer like that, it's not like you're making, a $500,000 investment. You're spending millions and millions of dollars. So I'm sure that felt like a little bit of pressure to find a good site for them.
Well, we never had a loser until we went to Utah. And it was a tough nut to crack. the LDS Church was, I don't think Lowe's quite understood that, but they sent their A team out and they figured out, hey, we need to be part of this community if we're going to be successful here. So they figured it out, and I think they're okay now. But it wasn't just us; it was their market research group, and their market research is key. Back to one of my original points, and you can predict those sales. They always figured that, hey, the market research people would say, we're going to give you a sales estimate. It's probably going to be low, because if that store opens less than what we give them, we could get fired. So in order to get that sales estimate up, they had to go to one of the executive members and say, could you sign off on an increased sales estimate? And that would enable us to get the ROI that we needed to make the deal fly. But they were usually conservative. The first store we did, and the ground-up store we did in Colorado, was in Colorado Springs, and they gave us a sales estimate of $25 million. We had 3 other sites that we could have put in Colorado Springs that Lowe said, golly, $25 million. No, if we do those, it's going to cut into the sales of that one, the sales transfer. That store may be unprofitable. So we passed on the other sites. The store opened at $50 million. So there's something to be said about being too low.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. That part of Home Depot's transitions between some of their leadership was they were pushing so much growth that there was business cannibalization under one of their past CEOs. That's fascinating. They're two different.
Yeah, there was a time when a lot of the Home Depot employees started bailing and coming to work for Lowe's. But I'll tell you that in the beginning, I think if Home Depot had moved into Charlotte and some of the key areas of Lowe's, home base, they could have maybe taken Lowe's out. They didn't know that. But Lowe's feared that.
Yeah.
Too late now, guys.
So you had a pretty extensive past in retail development. You mentioned Georgetown that you're working on now, and how much of a footprint you have in Georgetown. When we look at your day-to-day now, what is the May Group working on now?
We're trying to stay close to Lexington. I told you when I went to high school and college, so you probably figured out about how old I am. And
50 or so.
At least. Yeah. So we just don't feel like traveling a great deal now. So we're going to try to stay close to home and be really selective in what we work on. We're actually working on a big industrial project now, 20 acres. So I've kind of veered away from retail to a certain degree. Here, I talk about retail, but I'm doing a medical project, looking at an industrial project. We bought a 6-acre industrial project on Henry Clay Boulevard through one of your guys, Justin Ryder. Yeah, he did a great job.
He'll love that shout out.
Yeah, hey Justin.
And speaking to that, I love the retail side of the real estate business, but are there things right now that you're weary of in retail and why you're shifting, or is that just kind of the natural evolution that you've seen, or deals have kind of come across your plate?
Well, I mean, you can drive through some of these shopping centers and see the ones that are struggling, the shoes and the clothing and the things that you get from Amazon, or you buy online easily. The grocery store's doing great. Big boxes, Walmart's, Lowe's, Costco's doing great. But there's certain categories of retail that are struggling that we're aware of, and we're pretty risk averse at this point in our lives. So we're going to buy some industrial land. We're going to pay cash for it. So we're just going to wait for the game to come to us, and we just don't want to take on a bunch of debt unless we got some good, solid, income that we can count on to service that debt.
And an issue that gets brought up, and this is kind of shifting back towards Lexington, or really a little bit outside of Lexington as well, but a issue that gets brought up pretty much every episode at this point when talking about Central Kentucky is just the shortage of land. good developable land. How are you all, you're talking about closing on some of these deals, and you guys are still doing development work. How are you positioning yourself in a market that's really tight on supply, or what are you guys doing to try to find deals now?
Probably not enough to find good deals, because we've got a small crew of people, and it seems like I go into the office every day and I'm reading through documents along with Jacob Cassidy. He's what we refer to as a recovering attorney, and he's been a huge help to us, by the way, Jacob. Yeah, but we're really not out scouting, so we rely on people like you to bring us some deals and pre-qualify them, and we'll take a hard look at them. And it could be office. I like medical office, but just everyday office space is something that we would want to make sure that we got some really solid income. And we always try to look at the income first, and if we do a pro forma, do the income and say how much debt is that going to service, and see if your cost matches up with it. Don't go back and change your income projections, because you start lying to yourself when you do that.
Kind of the Lowe strategy of you may as well have a shortage on sales to start.
Yeah.
And overshoot that projection, hopefully.
Right. And the old saying is, if you're going to do bad deals, you got to do a lot of volume.
So that, a huge part of our listening audience are real estate investors, and most are based out of Lexington. If you were to give advice to somebody in their mid-20s to 40s, 50s, whatever it might be, if you're getting started in real estate investing right now, what kind of things would you advise over the next 5 to 10 years in buying?
Well, I think one of the things, and as who was it, Sparky Anderson or Yogi Berra said, it's not rocket surgery. So it truly isn't rocket surgery, but I guess you got to go through you got to know your weaknesses. I understand there's 4 kinds of people: those who know, those who don't know, those who know they don't know, and those who don't know they don't know. So recognize your weaknesses, and ask for help when you need it. Don't force it. Let the game come to you in a bit. We tend to, fall in love with these deals and force them. So knowing and understanding your risk. If you know it and you understand it and you want to take it, great. But if you don't know and understand it, you probably shouldn't take it. So get someone to help you if you need help. And always think about trying to fulfill a need rather than create a need. So assess the market. Try to get your tenants signed up in advance if you're doing new development, if you can. Be careful with spec. We don't like spec. Never have. So we've been pretty risk averse. We've never defaulted on a loan. We've never been sued. We've never sued anybody. We don't have time for that stuff. So you do your homework on the front end, you can stay out of the courthouse.
Just to finish it off, what are some keys to success that maybe we haven't mentioned that have helped you along the way?
I didn't talk enough about my wife and how supportive she's been. I couldn't have done this without her. It's plain and simple. She worked as a nurse. We had twin daughters when I didn't have a job in Bowling Green, Kentucky back in the day, and she never complained. So again, we've been married 49 years and hopefully 49 more. But she deserves as much credit as anybody here. My partner, or financial partner, Ballard Cassidy, same way. We graduated high school together. We played sports together, and we've stuck together. And we're 1 month apart in age. So, and his son Jacob works with us now. Jacob interned with me when he was at Transylvania. He went on and got his law degree at UK. He went to Miami University in Florida and got his LLM in real estate law. And but his true love was what we're doing today. And so he wanted to get off the hamster treadmill, come back to work. So the Cassidy family has been a meaningful part of this. In fact, we're trying to roll this into a new name called Vertical Realty. We have some name recognition with May Group, so we want to do that slowly, and you'll have an old friend with a new name, you know. So, but those are some of the things that I failed to mention earlier, and you know, I think are important to anybody. You know, a young person that wants to get into business, male or female. Have you a good spouse that can understand you, what you're trying to do, and support you.